Hello and welcome to Future Framed TV, the collective podcast series of Traces&Dreams. This series is Idioms of Normality, and I'm your host, Dr. Paul Mason, and today I am joined by a documentary filmmaker, Jessica Leski. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm really excited to be interviewing you because pre-COVID, you released and produced a documentary called I Used to Be Normal. But before I ask you what normal is and all the usual questions I ask in this series, I want to know a little bit more about you. Tell me, what turned you into becoming a filmmaker and what turned your attention towards normality?
So what made me become a filmmaker? I think I didn't know that was a career you could have growing up. I thought I would be a writer or a journalist. And it wasn't until I was getting ready for uni that a friend said, you know, you can do this filmmaking class where you study. I always loved film. I don't know, it just hadn't clocked for me that maybe that's being an Australian, you're not around that many filmmakers. So I ended up doing a course that was a lot of theory of film and art and photography, but also got to make films. And I realized I loved that. My dad had always been filming us with, home movies. I grew up, always making home movies. And
Did he edit them?
No.
Because that's something that people do. We make home movies, right? But like a lot of post-production goes into a documentary, right?
Yeah, I think that's something that we miss, that home movies, you would just film something happening for a really long time. And now, I don't know about you, but my phone is so full that if I want to make a video, it's usually a very short video. And so especially with my kid, I'm like, I would love to just film him playing like my dad used to in the backyard. But I'm like, oh, I can fit 30 seconds and that's all. And I really miss being able to just, with my sisters, we used to sit and watch our old home movies and just see the way we'd interact and see, the glimpse of a family member that had died walking in the background. Or, people don't really make home movies like that.
The family member died walking in the background?
Yeah, just you see people, not in like a ghost way. I just mean, it's a nice to see. Photos are amazing, but seeing someone moving on camera who's not here anymore, I feel like really connects you to them.
I'm glad I asked the question about post-production because you're making me really reminisce about home videos more than I saw of my sisters than of me. But they were long takes. They were all one take, and you really got to see people jumping between their attention on the swing and then running over and hugging the parents, and then whereas you're right, we really do take short takes, and it's almost like our attention span is mimicked by the
totally
short duration of the I could ask you questions about this journey towards becoming a filmmaker for a long time, and I'm sure we'll revisit that a little bit. Now, you've made a very popular documentary, I Used to Be Normal, and it has a very interesting and unusual topic that I wasn't expecting when I first saw the title. Okay. And I will be asking you about questions about the film, but let me ask you the more generic question first of all. Jessica, what is normal?
Well, I think I come to that question then within the context of the film, which is, so the full title is I Used to Be Normal, a Boyband Fangirl Story. And so the film follows a number of boy band fans from different generations. And I think I came to this topic because I hadn't been a boy band fan, so I kind of had missed out on the phenomena, and was trying to understand who these people were. So even I'm not 100% sure what a normal boy band fan is. I guess you would say it's a 14-year-old girl who screams a lot, but I came to the film as a 31-year-old woman being a boy band fan for the first time, not so big on screaming. So yeah, I think the film was me trying to explore what is a normal boy band fan, and then what is the quote is a direct quote from one of the characters in the film, who exclaims, "I used to be normal in this moment of panic," feeling herself losing control. So we love that moment and kind of use that as a jumping off point.
So she's in a moment of frenetic energy, and she's enjoying her rapture of the boy band, and then she's suddenly nostalgic about, I used to be like this. I used to be normal.
Yeah. She's actually not what at a concert or listening to music. She's at a party, like a barbecue, before watching a One Direction concert film, and they're all sitting there waiting for the pizza man and to deliver their pizza. And I don't know if she was even aware that she was being filmed by one of her friends, but she said, "I'm just imagining that Niall from One Direction is going to be the one who's bringing us the pizza," and starts, kind of hyperventilating at this thought, and then kind of catches herself in this feeling and exclaims, "What's going on with me? I used to be normal," and kind of, collapses on the picnic table. And I found that really interesting, that she could be in that moment, but still have that moment of reflection that, like, I'm not the person I used to be anymore, or I'm not behaving in a way that you're expected to behave, at a communal table.
It was very visceral, very embodied. Like, it wasn't just this sort of, oh yeah, I really enjoy listening to. It was, I imagine these things happen, and just imagining it can really throw my whole body into a frenzy. Wow. Okay, let's dissect two things first. Boy bands, have they been around forever? Is this a new thing? Like, imagine that I'm an extraterrestrial coming to planet Earth and I know nothing about boy bands, because I'm an outsider here. I really boy bands. I mean, are we talking about dating back pre Beatles? Are we?
I mean, the Beatles are a good starting point. I guess if you go back even further, you might have heard of Listomania, Franz Liszt.
Yes.
He was a pianist and apparently very handsome. And when he would perform at concerts, women would kind of be so overcome with maybe the combination of the music that we know is very powerful and how he looked, and would be showing behaviors that we might associate with crazy fan things, like trying to, if he broke I don't know, if he'd lost hair, or like they found a lock of his hair, or I don't know, just obsessive kind of love for a celebrity who's a musician.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, people have been fans, obsessive to, like, fans of, I don't know, people had their favorite gladiators and would wear the sweat of their favorite gladiator.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so it's, I think, being an obsessive fan or having an idol is not a particularly new phenomena.
Yeah.
But having maybe a group of young boys who make music together. So let me think. The definition of a boy band, and we have a scene in the film where we have one of the fans who's a brand strategist. So she gets a whiteboard and does a kind of beautiful mind illustration of all the things that you need to make a boy band. So according to her, there should be roughly, let's say, 3 to 5 members. Boys, they should be roughly 17 to 21 years old. This is not, it's not always like this, but if you look at the boy bands that we have in the 20th and 21st century, they kind of follow this. They should sing love songs, poppy love songs, in an accessible kind of way. There should be heartbreak and vulnerability in their songs, but also fun and uplifting messages. And also they should dress in a way that makes them look kind of coherently like a band. Which, I made a lot of enemies with people when I would say that the Beatles were a boy band. And I'm not saying they were their whole career, but if you look at them with this model, they were really young when they started. They wore the matching suits, and that was their manager's idea, who I think saw how cute would they look if they were in matching outfits, clean cut. That's part of it too, a kind of a innocence to it. And even that their first album, the Beatles, is mostly cover songs. People are like, they're real musicians, you can't call them a boy band. But that first album, I Want to Hold Your Hand, like that's such a boy band song. It's so innocent. I just want to hold your hand. Like, you know, what boy actually says that or thinks that? But that's how they, you know, connected to these young girls.
You're making me realize the spectrum or the range of variability here, because you've even got things like the Four Tenors, who are much older but very much exuding boy band qualities.
But well, according to Dara in the film, facial hair, if they have, well, they can have facial hair but no beards.
Oh,
So it wasn't Pavarotti and
so my window's gone.
yeah. Sorry, no beards.
I can never aspire to be part of a boy band now. Okay.
Next slide.
So we've covered what a boy band is, and there's quite a spectrum, and but there is sort of a rough recipe of sorts there, and obviously fans have very fixed ideas about what that recipe should be or should not.
I think that has, since we made the film, K-pop has become really big.
Is that the home of boy bands now and girl bands?
I think so, and I feel like I am not equipped because I don't know very much about that, but I do know that some of the groups are quite big. Like, you know, might have 7 members, 10 members, you know, they can be quite big.
And there's a real industry behind it too. Like they've turned this into a
there's factories where they train and
and I can see, just from my own experiences, if I'm trying to step inside here from my own experiences, I can see that the qualities of being a boy band fan versus a girl band fan are very different. Like the following of Spice Girls was very different to the following of, say, Human Nature. But
different in what way?
So I mean, it's hard. I find that question. Yeah, thanks for asking the question, because I actually, you've made me feel very uncomfortable in answering it, because my view on it is so particular. I had lots of so I did a lot of dance in my late teens and early 20s, and I saw a lot more women enjoying girl bands than boys enjoying girl bands. But then girl bands also had a really strong appeal to the LGBTIQA community, and then I forgot the plus, and I didn't enjoy them at the time. It felt plasticky and cheap. But now that I'm in my, I was about to say 30s, can we just pretend that when those songs are turned on, they make me happy in a way that they didn't make me happy at the time that they were released. And so, to understand my own experiences first, to answer that question, I think my window onto what constitutes boy band fans and girl band fans is a little bit different. Like, particularly in the 90s, growing up in the 90s, and if you had lots of photos of girl bands up on your walls, that was not necessarily in line with the masculinity that you were supposed to toe. Whereas I think it was much more acceptable for teenage girls to have posters of not just boy bands but girl bands as well, possibly. And so the market, like, I wouldn't have wanted to be seen in the 90s as a young teenage boy going to the record store buying a girl band CD. Like, that's just not how I would have wanted to be seen, being socially conscious. But it was also aesthetically, it just wasn't the appeal of the music that I liked. But that's not to say that there weren't boys who liked the girl bands, but they might be watching it for a different reason. I don't, you know, much more for the film clips maybe than for the music.
I think there's also a misconception that girls who like boy bands, like, it's exclusively romantic. And I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to make that film, because that wasn't why I was interested. So it was One Direction that was my first boy band, even though, I was also at school at the height of the, you know, glory days of boy bands, Take That and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And, you know, I was not, like you, I was not that interested in it. I was dismissive of it. So it wasn't until One Direction that I was like, oh, this is what is this phenomena? Why has it captured my attention? And so it wasn't romantic for me. And then I think that was why I then wanted to talk to fans who, I'm not saying it's not romantic for some fans, but just because I came at it at that age, I was looking for fans who were having different kinds of experiences, who it hadn't just been this kind of flash in the pan thing that they'd loved as 14-year-olds. It was something that had continued or evolved, or they'd come at it from a different direction.
I think this is why my ears, my antennae sort of peaked a little bit when you talked about normal boy band fans, because I think one of the reasons that I'm pursuing this series is because I really want to understand. I really want to unpack how normal is not just one thing. And I think what you're saying here about the fans of the boy band phenomena is that there's not just one version of being a boy band fan, but nonetheless there is something epidemiological about the quantity of people who have this visceral fervor to follow a boy band fan. So what fits within the umbrella of behaviors fitting with a fan of a boy band?
I wanted to say, and speaking of normal, if you saw footage of people screaming crazily and you found out that footage was from a football match, you'll be like, well, of course they're screaming at a football match and they're wearing their outfits and they've painted their faces with their team color. Of course, that's totally normal. Of course, they've got pictures of their favorite footballers on their walls. But if you saw that footage and you were like, and you found out it was a boy band concert and they were wearing the outfits and screaming and crying, you would be like, what is wrong with them? Like, that's so immature, or that's so stupid. Why can't they get a hold of themselves? And I thought that was really interesting, that there are hobbies that we treat as normal and things we make fun of, and the way you express your love of those things can be pretty much identical. But if it's something that women or girls do, or it's something that you've decided is commercially, manufactured, so it can't have any value, we're very judgmental of people who like those kinds of things.
It's funny, isn't it? Sports can really conceal the fabrication quite well, but there is a whole industry producing football teams. There is a whole industry producing athletes that is just like the industry producing singers and dancers. And although maybe one industry gets better funding than the other, and it's funny too, because when you think about people going to Comic-Con who are considered the more strange characters in society, and I'm talking not about my worldview, but just sort of like the general feel that you get from wider society is that people who dress up as their favorite elvish character from some obscure video game is kind of weird. But the person who wears the rugby jumper of their favorite rugby player and then goes to watch the rugby match, that's, like you said, that's accepted, that's normal. And yet
even if they keep talking about it, for weeks later, they think everyone wants to hear about their football team. I find it funny. My uncle is always like, oh, we had a great game on the weekend. Oh, we won, whatever. It's like, you didn't. It's very interesting that he has got this ownership. He didn't play. But yeah, he's like, my team is my identity. And he's proud about that.
It is funny how you can it's not just a personal thing, but you can actually organize society by allegiances to popular icons. So I worked at Monash University for years, and the first question the lady asked me, who was organizing where my office would be, first question she asked me was, what football team do you go for? And I said, oh, Bombers. And so she put me in the wing of the building where all the Bombers supporters were. And then there was a wing, funnily enough, she was an ABC, she was anything but Collingwood. And she put all the Collingwood supporters as far from her own office as she could. And so because she had the power to dictate this, but in a way, in a micro scale, she had organized the society around her according to people's allegiances to different football teams, which of course is only possible in Melbourne.
Well, and what if you didn't have a football team? Where would she put you?
Yeah, that's the funny thing, isn't it? Like, people who, I mean, in my experience at Monash, people very quickly learnt they had to decide upon a football team. And yeah, you are outcast if you don't have you're not outcast, but you can made to be feel like you're on the outside. And I've met someone who worked at a printery, and he said he wasn't interested in sports at all, but he became a specialist on sports while he was working at the printery because he just simply had nothing else to talk about with his colleagues unless he was going through which teams won on the weekend, who performed really well, who performed really poorly.
And yeah, imagine if that was about a boy band. Like if you have your job interview.
What does that world look like?
I'm just trying to picture. But yeah, we just accept in Australia that, I mean, even so my son is 5 and so he's starting school next year, and I'm already thinking like, and we don't really watch football. I'm like, I better give him a team, tell him a team so that he can join in a conversation. And yeah, my family is also Essendon, and that's because my dad, when he was a kid, someone said, I'll bash you up if you don't barrack for Essendon. So it was like,
it's such a relief because it means we can continue the interview at least. That's good. Because imagine if you weren't an Essendon performer, we'd have to Essendon supporter. We'd have to. No.
It is just it's funny to step back and realize how differently we talk about sport and football in particular in Australia. Even just that we accept that the end of the news is sport news, as if everyone cares about it. Like I would rather some arts news or some nature news, or I don't know, just really not everyone cares about.
Yeah, there's not the culture of reviewing arts in Australia in the same way that you might see in other countries, and it really hits you with Australian news when you jump from a conflict in another country, and then the next thing they're talking about is
a horse race.
Yeah, horse racing, or
football.
My partner's Brazilian, and we're listening to the radio the other day, and they went from talking about a really sensitive topic to then talking about a sport, and there was the one sentence just ran on to another, and of course for someone who's speaking English as a second language, unless there's a demarcation, something that very clearly defines we're changing topic now, you just think these two topics are blended somehow, and it became very confusing, and I was completely sympathetic to that confusion, which kind of is very particular to the way in which sports is a staple diet of Australian culture.
And yeah, we're kind of bagging it, I guess, but they fundamentally have, do similar things for us. It makes you feel like you're part of a community. Going to a concert or a sporting match can be a real cathartic kind of letting go, be with other people. You can have idols who you're really impressed with how they perform. So I think they do serve similar needs for us as humans.
I didn't think that we were bagging it, but now that we're pushing the discussion,
not bagging, but I'm just saying why it's not that great.
It.
Why are we giving it all this attention that it might not deserve?
I'm always very careful to say to people, just because I'm being critical doesn't mean I'm being negative. Like I think it's really important to be critical, and that doesn't mean that holding something in a negative space. But it is interesting when you think about it that I've never seen a fight break out after a concert. I've never seen like a large scale people throwing bottles at each other after a concert the same way that I see this in the news about a soccer match.
Because it's not about rivalry. Yeah, so it's got a different. Yeah, there's the atmosphere in a boy band concert, which I'm relatively new to, is so beautiful. I was actually saying to my partner, I wish I had a boy band concert to go to right now, because the world is just feeling sad and stressful, and going somewhere where you could just scream and be surrounded by love and happiness, like where do we really get that en masse? There's nowhere other than a boy band concert, or maybe I don't know, because sporting, when you think about sporting matches, it is often there's a winner and a loser, so someone's going home sad. But when you go to a concert of a band that you love, it can be such a beautiful, positive thing, for your body to experience.
Is there something ritualistic about the things that fans will do in order? Because some of the things you're saying make me think about the way that someone feels like if they just reached out and touched someone, they would be healed. Or if some of the evangelical Christian movements that have become popular around the world
Mm.
have built off that aura of peace and love and joy and healing, and the boy bands perhaps do that in a more secular context. But there's still something ritualistic about it. You know, like there's an act before the main act. There's a like people know that to build up the emotions, but also on the side of fans, like, are they going through a ritual ablutions prior to going out? And
well, yeah, I think not just the concert, but even for the film we interviewed a fan artist, and she said something like all the art in like the famous galleries is just fan art of the Bible. Like people just draw the things that they love, and at the time those were the stories and the people that they were thinking about and dreaming of. And now, you know, I do drawings of Harry Styles because I think about him and I wish I could talk to him, the same way people probably feel about religious figures.
Has anyone, sorry, this is a tangential question, I apologize, I'm breaking your line of thought.
Okay.
For a really silly question, has any boy band member seen your documentary? Have you heard of any of them?
I would like to think that they have. We did a Kickstarter to raise money early on in the film, and the Backstreet Boys gave to the Kickstarter. So, well, their management,
huge.
But you know, it came from the Backstreet Boys account. So I feel like they're aware of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, who knows?
And so you follow the lives of 4 people in the film. Actually, before I ask you about the film, you were talking about the ritual dimensions of
Yeah, I thought of another one the film follows 4 characters, but of different generations. So there's a teenager who's a One Direction fan, someone in their 20s who's a Backstreet Boys fan, someone in their 30s who was a Take That fan, and someone in their 60s who was a Beatles fan. And you know, it's documentary, so it's real. You're not telling them what to do. And each of them went to their cupboards and pulled out a box, pretty much, of their treasures, of their boy band treasures.
Relics.
Yeah, relics.
Here's
and
my
just, you know,
relic.
the most random, you know, oh, here's a streamer that fell from the ceiling at my concert, or here's the receipt from a sandwich I bought on the day that whatever it was, Robbie Williams walked past me. So yeah, very holy objects. And each of them, even though some of them were, you know, 40, 50 years old already, crumbling magazine articles, kept these things in a precious place, put away.
It's like the football going, or the baseball, or the cricket bat being passed out after a match, and people hold on to it and they want the signature on it as well, isn't it? And these people want to take home the band shirt, but also if they can get something signed, that's the dream, a signed photo.
It was nice seeing like actual, you know, physical things. So many, you know, I'm sure fans these days, their phones are filled with screenshots of their favorite moments, but to actually, you know, have things you can touch that connect you to the band or to moments that you feel like you shared with the band or other fans. It's really nice to still see people collecting physical things.
And you said you've developed an interest in One Direction.
Yeah.
Are you happy to talk about your own? Like,
are
you able to be...
That's why the film happened, I guess. So this was 2012, which is, you know, a while ago now. But as I said, I hadn't liked boy bands and had been dismissive of them. And then something happened to me. I heard one of their songs on the radio, and I was vaguely aware of them as a phenomena, but, you know, it wasn't my interest. Heard one of their songs on the radio, and the song's called One Thing. And it's a very simple song. It's just saying, and very vague, as a lot of boy band songs are. It's just saying, I want that one thing, and you've got that one thing. So that could be about anything. You know, any person can hear that and be like, oh, I think, you know, I might have that one thing. Anyway, and the song is very repetitive. So I heard it on the radio.
Ice cream,
and I thought, yeah, ice cream, your eyes, whatever. So the song was really catchy. And I remember the first time I heard it thinking, do they think we're stupid? Like, they've just sung the chorus like 7 times in a row. Can they not be more creative? But then the song was stuck in my head. And I got to work and I was like, I should check the video clip of this, because, the loop was stuck in my head. And the video clip for that song in particular, so sweet. The One Direction boys are wearing suits, which, when do you see young men now? Or, this was over 10 years ago, in a video clip wearing suits, running around London, very kind of early Beatles, Hard Day's Night kind of thing. And I just thought, wow, I have not seen anything like this or felt as like invested or interested in this, at something like this for a while. And, the internet allows you to go down a rabbit hole of who are these people? Do they have other songs? So the beginning of my interest was in the band and me feeling like, are all boy bands like this? Have I missed out on some interesting phenomena? And then I guess that led me to, this was kind of peak Tumblr time and Twitter. I just started being on Twitter at that time and just seeing how funny and creative the fans were in a way I hadn't expected, because I had this idea that boy band fans were just screaming idiots who didn't know what good music was. I was I was a judgmental teenager in the 90s and hadn't really given much thought to it. But then suddenly I was seeing this incredible fan art, chapters long fan fiction that was so well written, video mashups of such interesting stuff that I had never experienced before, because I'd never really been a fan of anything when the internet was such a big part of my life. So I realized quickly that I'd not only judged the bands, but had really misjudged fans. And I was like, I think there's something interesting here to explore that I don't feel like I've seen before.
It's funny, you're making me think that people are making all these analogies between religion and with the ritual dimensions of fan behavior. Some fan fiction is incredibly well written, like you said, and I think one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman, he actually, one of his first literary awards was for a piece of fan fiction, and now look at him, he's like the most prolific writer.
I think a lot of writers have gotten their start from fan fiction.
And then, like, when I think about religion, I'm like, wow, there's probably lots of fan fiction that's just been written that we don't realize. It's
you mean Bible
we
fan
hold it up
fiction?
as a holy, we hold it up as holy texts, but when the first guru of Sikhism, for example, went to see Mecca, like, he went back and started his own religion. Like, surely there's a dimension of the fan fiction in there, right? And lots of books in the Christian Bible, for example, have this dimension of fan fiction. Like St. Paul was writing letters that were basically kind of part fan fiction, although the genre didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to diminish anything about those texts. I'm saying something about that's actually valuing fan fiction and elevating it from this sort of that weird part of the internet, that obscure part of the internet that only appeals to other fans. The documentary follows 4 people's lives, and you've got a nice little range of age groups there, but also 4 different bands that they're following. But the underlying theme, I used to be normal, captures something nostalgic about that sense of, I didn't used to be like this. Can you speak to me about the nostalgia of normality?
I think it was appealing for me to pick that range of fans because a big part of it is nostalgia. I think we're all, in a way, nostalgic for our teenage years. And in particular, the music that you listen to as a teenager, your brain is reforming pretty much at that age. So the music that you listen to really does imprint on your brain and become such an important part of who you are. So there's definitely a huge nostalgic part to this. But I think the reason why the fans that I chose in particular appealed to me were because they were people who were still quite active in their fandom. it wasn't something that they'd left behind. Those people, we did a lot of interviews, and they didn't all make the cut. We had a lot of subjects, and there were fans who spoke about it, purely in a nostalgic way, and that's nice, but that's not what I was looking for. I wanted people who could still feel the effect, or were still like living with their fandom in a really present way.
Yeah, to the point that they're collapsing at the mere imagination of.
It's not so much that. It's, if I think about the older fans, it's ways they're still like incorporating their fandom in a daily way. If that's that they have pictures on their wall, or they're listening to the music, or they're developing projects that are related in some way to the band. Or the Backstreet Boys fan, though, for her, it is still present because the Backstreet Boys are still together, which most boy bands aren't. So they've been together for, I don't know, 25, I don't know, a long time. That means you can still keep that frenzy going if you want. You can still see them regularly. They still release new music. I guess the Beatles just did that. But the Backstreet Boys fan in the film is very interesting because she's struggling with, I think there's a detriment in a way to the band having such longevity, because for her to still be able to see them, to still be like, I don't know if you want that. You kind of, not saying you want your fandom to end, but to still, they're in their 50s now. So I'm sure once some of the Backstreet Boys guys, and they're still singing these really innocent love songs, and they can't really dance in the same way, kind of loses a bit of that magic. So I feel like her fan loving them is present, but it loses a bit of the shine when they, get beards and creaky knees.
It is interesting to me to see things like I see what you're saying there, in the sense that when something is in the past, you can crystallize that memory and you can revisit that memory. But when you see the performers still on stage today, it disrupts that crystallized memory from your teens, because it not replaces it, but it updates that memory and reminds you that these are living human beings who age and wrinkle and grow sideways the same way that all of us do.
Yeah. Without giving a spoiler away of the film, there is a wonderful moment, I feel like, near the end, where Sadia, who's the Backstreet Boys fan, goes on a Backstreet Boys cruise and says a line, something like, "I was an observer to my own insanity." Because you think that's something you want to do. You have this incredible access to them. You're on a boat with them. They're performing every day. You can play beach volleyball with them, but I feel like, it loses some of its magic. It separates. You kind of want them on a stage. You want them as your idols. You don't want to see them like, we've got a shot of Nick Carter like chewing on a chicken wing. Like, I don't know if you don't want to see them as real people necessarily.
It's funny because when I think about my own life, and I'm not making this about me, I'm just trying to relate to this experience. I mean, trying to relate to this experience. I sometimes think about the mentors who have had the briefest time in my life, have sometimes left me with an impression of what's possible that's a little bit unrealistic, because they were my mentor, because they were showing me the best of themselves for a very short period of time, and I held on to that. And by seeing the best of them, it's given me something that I will aspire to. But having spent a very limited amount of time with them, I didn't see their shortfalls. I didn't see their shortcomings. I didn't see their challenges. I didn't see where there were some chinks in their armor. And I can see that this fan who holds Backstreet Boys up in such high regard, and then the curtain is pulled back a little bit. They have to use soap around their body the same way that all of us do in places that are unseemly, and then it can get you to question things that you had hidden from your own view a bit.
And I think your boy bands in particular, they're real people, but they are marketed each one as a particular kind of character. which is probably based partly on their personalities, but they become, you know, there's the cute one and the mysterious one and the, I don't know, the edgy one. So
Posh Spice and Sporty
yeah,
Spice.
they become they took that to, you know, the limit with the Spice Girls. So you know they're real people, but they're characters in your mind. So yeah, you want that. You don't want that curtain to come down.
If it isn't apparent to people watching, I have yet to see the video, the documentary. But I've seen the trailer and I'm super intrigued, and I am going to be going up and watching this with great interest, and I hope that listeners and viewers of the YouTube channel will also do the same. And we've looked at various dimensions of your documentary. We've looked at the fans. We've talked about the bands in particular, but also a little bit about your journey to becoming a documentary maker. Having made this documentary prior to COVID, and with normality called into question so prominently in public life and in personal life during COVID and being a parent over COVID, how have your views of normality changed?
Well, yeah, the things that I did to make this film happen, I can't imagine doing now. You know, that there are subjects in Australia and America, and I would just jump on a plane and, you know, sleep on someone's couch.
Did you go on the cruise?
I didn't go on a cruise.
Okay.
But luckily there's a lot of good footage. She had some footage, and there's a lot of footage on YouTube. And it's not only boy bands. They could go on a Kiss cruise, or, you know, there's a lot of bands that have realized it's an amazing way to make money because their fans want that intimacy. So, you know, think of your favorite band and check if they're doing a cruise. But yeah, just that's partly, you know, being a parent now, feeling like I can't just, with documentary, it does feel like you need to just be able to jump on something that's happening. So having that flexibility in my life of just being like, I'm going to grab my camera and I'm going to grab my passport and just go where the story is. That time might come back for me, but right now it's hard to, that was so normal for me then. It does not feel normal anymore.
Well, I'm sure that you're working on some projects currently, and if not, working on some projects in the future. Before you embark on the next project, can I ask you, what questions should we be asking about normality?
I think what I hope my film does is make people rethink things they might have been judgmental of. Things that girls or women like, why we judge those things before looking into what they actually are, why we dismiss people who are obsessive or excessively passionate about things if they're not things that we also agree with.
Yeah, why do we so readily yuck another person's yum? It's funny, isn't it? Because it can take a little bit of training to not be judgmental.
Yeah. And yeah, normal, in pop culture, I don't know what normal, like lots of people would say the thing that's most popular is the most normal, maybe. But then why do we make fun of the fans? I don't, you know, Taylor Swift is like currently the most powerful, like, person in the world in lots of ways. But I feel like, and so she's like, it's in a way really mainstream. But I feel like people are still judgmental of fans, even though you could say they're just doing the thing that is expected of them. They are loving the music that is most popular right now,
and not just expected of them. They are the image and the marketing and the publicity and the propaganda is all targeted to get them to that point.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and then we make fun of them for liking the thing that they've been kind of pushed to like.
Yeah, that kind of in a funny way. It kind of sums up a little bit of society for me. And I might be going on a bit of a tangent, and hopefully I'm not. But I kind of feel like there's so many things that we're sold. We are sold on things like having to buy petrol, sold on having to buy preserved food. And there's very little choice otherwise. And then we may feel bad about it. you know, oh, well, there's not many other options other than petrol. So you have to buy petrol, but, oh, you're releasing carbon emissions. Oh, there's not a lot of options other than preserved food, processed food. And there are other options. They're a bit more expensive, but if you buy the processed food, we're also going to make you feel bad about that. And it's this dual sort of the contradictory stimuli of I want and I need this, but it's going to make me feel bad at the same time. And so society is almost like robbing us of our serotonin and then selling it back to us in the form of dopamine. And I really feel like keeping us in that contradiction keeps us in a state of kind of paralysis about our consumption. Thank you for prompting that thought. That was a really that's good. And I don't even expect you to respond to that because
I did. Well, I was thinking, I think this is related, but I was thinking about what it looks like to be a normal audience member at a show, at a concert. And that before the Beatles came to Australia, you would sit still in the concert. Like that was what was expected of you. That was what was normal to do when you saw a show. And the Beatles, I think, were the first time, or one of the first times, that people were up out of their seats, feeling the music, reacting to the people on stage, and how good that feels to kind of let yourself physically feel something and have a release. But I still don't know what people would say, what is the normal way to be at a concert? And, you know, I'd like to think it's personal, but I'm sure people have an idea that either you sit still and you just listen and you observe, or you fully like immerse yourself in the experience.
And
so I don't know which is.
Why isn't all of the above acceptable?
Yeah.
Well, it kind of speaks to the idea that normal is about control, like making us all conform.
Yeah, and doing what the majority is doing. It's hard to be the first person who stands up at a concert, or the person who's sitting down when everyone around you is dancing.
Jessica Leski, documentary maker extraordinaire. I have been extremely privileged to have you on the show and ask you these questions, and I feel like I should have been asking you so many more questions, but I'd be chewing up way too much of your time, which is very precious, both as a professional but also as a parent. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this episode and for answering these questions. And hopefully people go out and not just watch I Used to Be Normal, but some of your other documentaries too. And thank you from Traces&Dreams and Idioms of Normality for people who follow this series in particular. We're on Future Frame TV, the collective podcast series of Traces&Dreams.